What if I told you that one man in this countdown won both a World Rodeo Championship and an Academy Award? And to this day, no other human being has ever matched that feat. What if I told you another was ordered to step off a landing craft first at one of the bloodiest beaches of World War II? Not because he volunteered, but because he was the tallest man on the boat. And what if I told you that one of the most famous cowboy stars in Hollywood history spent 3 years in federal prison before he ever set foot on a movie set? These are the 10 toughest Western actors of old Hollywood. Not the best gunfighters on screen. The men whose real lives made their movie roles look like a vacation. And the man at number 1? His claim to toughness is so undeniable that no one in 100 years of Hollywood has been able to match it. Number 10. The rifleman who shattered records before he shattered bad guys. Chuck Connors. Before Chuck Connors ever spun that modified Winchester on the rifleman, he was doing something almost no athlete in history has accomplished. He played professional basketball for the Boston Celtics and professional baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Chicago Cubs. Only 13 athletes have ever played in both Major League Baseball and the NBA. But here is the detail that separates him. On November 5, 1946, before the Celtics' very first home game at the Boston Arena, Connors shattered the backboard during warm-ups. Glass rained down onto the court. The game was delayed more than an hour. He became the first player in professional basketball history to break a backboard, and the Celtics had not even tipped off their inaugural season yet. Standing 6'5", Connors served in World War II as a tank warfare instructor at Fort Campbell and West Point. He brought that discipline to the screen. As Lucas McCain in The Rifleman from 1958 to 1963, he performed every single rifle spin himself, having practiced the move thousands of times. He also starred in The Big Country, opposite Gregory Peck, and the series Branded from 1965 to 1966. Connors died of lung cancer in 1992 at 71. But was the rifleman really the toughest man on this list? Or does the next entry make his athletic career look like practice? Number 9. The war hero who stormed a machine gun nest alone, Neville Brand. Neville Brand did not come to Hollywood through an agent or a screen test. He came through a war. Born in Griswold, Iowa in 1920, Brand enlisted in the Army straight out of high school in 1939. He shipped out with the 331st Infantry Regiment, 83rd Infantry Division, and saw combat across the Ardennes, the Rhineland, and Central Europe. On March 1, 1945, in Germany, Brand and his unit came under withering machine gun fire from a hunting lodge. Every man was pinned down. Nobody could move. What Brand did next earned him the Silver Star, the third highest decoration for valor in the United States military. In his own words, years later, he explained it simply. He said, "I must have flipped my lid. I decided to go into that lodge." He went in through the rear, alone, and single-handedly cleared the enemy positions inside. 1 month later, on April 7, 1945, Brand was shot in the upper right arm along the Weser River and nearly bled to death. He was also awarded the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star, and the Combat Infantryman Badge. Media reports called him the 4th most decorated soldier of the war, a claim Brand himself repeatedly denied. After the war, Brand worked on a 1946 Army Signal Corps film alongside a young Charlton Heston, then used the GI Bill to study acting. He became one of Hollywood's most menacing heavies, starring in the Western series Laredo from 1965 to 1967 and appearing in The Tin Star and dozens of Gunsmoke-era westerns. But the war never left him. Brand developed severe post-traumatic stress disorder, which led to a brutal battle with alcohol. In a 1975 interview, he put it plainly. He said the booze became medicine, and the only way he could face the morning was to grab a pint of whiskey just to make a phone call. Brand was also a voracious reader who owned over 30,000 books, one of the largest private libraries in Hollywood, until a 1978 fire destroyed his Malibu home and most of that collection with it. He died of emphysema in 1992 at 71, a genuine hero who spent the second half of his life trying to outrun the first. A silver star and a hunting lodge full of enemy soldiers cleared by one man who must have flipped his lid. But does the next entry make even a war hero's path look straightforward? Number 8. The ex-con who rode his way to Hollywood, Rory Calhoun. Rory Calhoun's real name was Francis Timothy McCown, and his early life reads like a crime novel. Born in Los Angeles in 1922, the son of a professional gambler who died when Calhoun was 9 months old, he was raised by a stepfather who beat him regularly. At 13, he stole a revolver and was sent to the Preston School of Industry Reformatory. He escaped. After robbing several jewelry stores, he stole a car and drove it across state lines. At 17, he was sentenced to 3 years at the federal penitentiary in Springfield, Missouri. When that sentence was finished, he was transferred to San Quentin on other charges and stayed until he was paroled just before his 21st birthday. By 20, Calhoun had served time in a reformatory, a federal penitentiary, and San Quentin. Most men who walk that path never comes out. Calhoun did not just come back. He became a star. After his release, he worked as a lumberjack, a miner, a cowboy, and a truck driver. Then, in January 1944, while riding horseback in the Hollywood Hills, he was spotted by actor Alan Ladd. Ladd's wife was a talent agent and got Calhoun his first screen test. Standing 6'4" with a face that looked carved from the desert, he was a natural for westerns. He starred in over 80 films, including River of No Return, opposite Robert Mitchum and Marilyn Monroe, and the hit series The Texan from 1958 to 1960. In 1955, Confidential magazine exposed his criminal past, but instead of destroying his career, it only enhanced his outlaw image. Calhoun died in 1999 at 76, proof that where you start does not determine where you finish. But does the next man's broken body make even a prison sentence look comfortable? Number 7. The rodeo clown, whose body was a map of destruction, Slim Pickens. Most people know Slim Pickens as the man who rode an atomic bomb in Dr. Strangelove, or the bumbling foreman in Blazing Saddles. What they do not know is that Louis Burton Lindley Jr. spent nearly 20 years in the most dangerous job in the rodeo arena, a rodeo clown and bullfighter. That job means standing between a 2,000-pound bucking bull and a fallen rider, using your own body as a target so the cowboy on the ground can crawl to safety. Pickens did this at the Calgary Stampede, Cheyenne Frontier Days, and the Pendleton Roundup, starting when he was barely a teenager. The toll was staggering. 2 broken wrists, broken collarbones, hands, elbows, and ribs, a crushed chest, a broken back twice, broken foot bones 5 separate times. He once had one side of his body x-rayed, and the scan showed 17 broken bones on that side, alone. He got his name at 16 when he quit school to ride rodeo. His father swore to throw him out if he saw his name on an entry list. So Lindley asked the rodeo manager for a fake name. The manager looked at the kid and said the prize money would be Slim Pickens. He wrote it down and won $400 that afternoon. Hollywood found him in 1950, when director William Keighley spotted him at a rodeo and cast him in Rocky Mountain with Errol Flynn. He went on to appear in One-Eyed Jacks with Brando, The Cowboys with Wayne, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and The Getaway with McQueen. He never needed a stunt double because no stuntman alive could ride better. Pickens died in 1983 at 64 after surgery for a brain tumor. But does the next entry's battlefield valor make Slim's rodeo injuries look like paper seize cuts? Number 6. The boxer turned twice-wounded war hero who never took an acting lesson, Dale Robertson. Dale Robertson never took an acting lesson in his life. Everything he brought to the screen was real. Born in Harrah, Oklahoma in 1923, he grew up training horses and boxing competitively at Oklahoma Military Academy. When World War II broke out, Robertson earned his commission through Officer Candidate School and deployed to Europe with the 322nd Combat Engineer Battalion of the 97th Infantry Division. He saw some of the heaviest fighting of the European campaign. Robertson was wounded twice in action and was awarded both the Bronze Star and the Silver Star for gallantry, 2 of the highest decorations the military can bestow. In one engagement, he was blown out of a tank hatch by an explosion that killed the rest of his crew. He survived and kept fighting. After the war, Robertson went home to Oklahoma and went back to his horses. He never gave details about what happened over there. Most genuine tough men never do. Hollywood found him by accident when agents spotted a photograph his mother had taken. Time magazine would later call him probably the best horseman on television. He starred as Jim Hardy in Tales of Wells Fargo from 1957 to 1962, riding his own horse Jubilee and doing his own stunts. He followed that with Iron Horse and Death Valley Days, keeping over 200 horses on his Oklahoma ranch until he died in 2013 at 89. But does the next entry's extraordinary war story make even a silver star look like a footnote? Number 5. The man they used as a human depth gauge at Anzio, James Arness. January 22, 1944. Anzio Beach, Italy. Private James Arness of Minneapolis was standing in a landing craft with the 3rd Infantry Division, 4 months shy of his 21st birthday. Then came the order. Because Arness stood 6 feet and 7 inches tall, the Army decided he would be first off the boat. Not because he volunteered, not because he was brave, because they needed to know how deep the water was, and the tallest man on the craft was the most efficient way to measure it. He stepped into the Mediterranean with bullets screaming overhead. The water came up to his waist. He waved the rest forward. 10 days later, on February 1, 1944, German machine gun fire ripped through his right leg, shattering the bone. Doctors nearly amputated. Penicillin saved the leg, but Arness spent over a year in hospitals and endured multiple surgeries before his honorable discharge. He was awarded the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and the Combat Infantryman Badge. The man who became James Arness, dropping the U from his family name, carried that pain for the rest of his life. If you watched all 635 episodes of Gunsmoke from 1955 to 1975, you may have noticed Matt Dillon's limp grew more pronounced each season. That was not acting. That was Anzio, following him for 30 years. John Wayne personally recommended Arness for the role. Arness played Marshal Dillon for 20 years, the longest-running prime-time live-action series in television history. Arness died on June 3, 2011, at 88. Can anyone top a man who was literally ordered to walk into enemy fire first? Keep watching. Number 4. The Marine fighter pilot turned Hollywood's most fearless stuntman, Jock Mahoney. Jock Mahoney was the kind of man that other tough men looked at and said, "That guy is on a different level." Born Jacques Joseph O'Mahony in 1919, he was a champion swimmer and diver at the University of Iowa before enlisting in the United States Marines, where he became a fighter pilot and flight instructor. After the war, Mahoney walked onto Hollywood backlots and into a career that would make him arguably the greatest stuntman in the history of Westerns. He doubled John Wayne, Errol Flynn, Gregory Peck, and Randolph Scott, taking the falls and the hits so the stars did not have to. His signature moment came on Adventures of Don Juan, where a high staircase leap was so dangerous that every other stuntman in Hollywood turned it down. Mahoney demanded $1,000 for the stunt, an unheard of sum at the time, and the studio paid without argument because they knew no one else would attempt it. Mahoney stepped in front of the camera as the star of The Range Rider from 1951 to 1953, doing every stunt himself. He followed that with Yancey Derringer from 1958 to 1959. During the filming of Tarzan's 3 Challenges in Thailand, Mahoney contracted dysentery, dengue fever, and pneumonia at the same time. He lost nearly 50 pounds but refused to stop filming. He completed the movie on sheer willpower while his body was breaking down around him. In 1973, he survived a stroke and returned to work. He died in 1989 at 70. But can the next entry's coal mine origins and reconstructed face top even that? Number 3. The coal miner's son whose face was rebuilt by war, Jack Palance. Jack Palance was born Volodymyr Palahniuk on February 18, 1919, in the coal mining town of Latimer Mines, Pennsylvania. His father, an anthracite miner, would die of black lung disease. As a teenager, young Volodymyr went down into those same mines and worked alongside men who coughed up black dust and counted every day above ground as a gift. He escaped through his fists. Palance won a football scholarship to the University of North Carolina, dropped out, and became a professional boxer under the name Jack Brazzo. He compiled a reported record of 15 consecutive victories, 12 by knockout, before losing to future heavyweight contender Joe Boxey on December 17, 1940. He later said, "You must be nuts to get your head beaten in for $200. Then came the war. Palance enlisted in the Army Air Forces and became a bomber pilot. In 1943, his B-24 caught fire and crashed near Tucson, Arizona, when an engine failed on takeoff. He suffered severe burns and head injuries, requiring extensive reconstructive surgery, spending nearly 2 years in military hospitals. The surgery gave him the gaunt, angular look that became his trademark. He enrolled at Stanford on the GI Bill, then made his way to Broadway, where he understudied Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire, and eventually replaced him as Stanley Kowalski. Richard Widmark once called him the only actor he had ever been physically afraid of. His breakthrough came as the hired gunfighter Jack Wilson in Shane in 1953, earning an Oscar nomination. For decades, he was Hollywood's most terrifying villain. Then, in 1991, at the age of 73, Palance won his first Oscar for City Slickers and celebrated by dropping to the floor and doing one-armed push-ups on live television. Palance died on November 10, 2006, at 87. But does the next entry's wartime sacrifice and heartbreaking end make even Palance's story feel like a prologue? Number 2. The gentle giant who fought 209 days of hell. Dan Blocker. Everybody loved Hoss Cartwright. For 14 seasons of Bonanza, Dan Blocker played the big, lovable son of the Ponderosa with a warmth that made him the most popular cast member on the show. What almost nobody knew was that the real Dan Blocker was every bit as tough as the frontier he portrayed. He was born on December 10, 1928, in DeKalb, Texas, reportedly weighing 14 pounds at birth. He grew to 6'4" and over 300 pounds with a shoe size of 14.5. While attending college in Texas, he worked as a rodeo performer on weekends and a bar bouncer on weeknights. He earned a master's degree and worked as a high school English teacher before Hollywood ever knew his name. Then, the Korean War changed everything. Drafted in 1950, Blocker was assigned to Company F, 2nd Battalion, 179th Infantry Regiment, 45th Infantry Division, the legendary Thunderbirds. He landed at Incheon and was on the front lines by Christmas Day, 1951. For the next 209 days, Blocker was in nearly continuous combat along the Jamestown Line, in what is now North Korea. His unit fought at Pork Chop Hill, Old Baldy, and Hill 223, names Korean War veterans remember as some of the bloodiest ground of the entire conflict. During one of those battles, Blocker was shot while trying to rescue a fellow soldier. He refused evacuation and stayed on the line until his regiment was ordered to the rear. He received the Purple Heart, the Combat Infantryman Badge, and the Korean Service Medal with 2 bronze campaign stars. In 1959, he was cast as Hoss Cartwright, and for 14 years he brought a gentleness to the role that audiences adored, never knowing the man behind the smile had spent 209 days in combat on frozen Korean hillsides. On May 13, 1972, Dan Blocker died from a pulmonary embolism following routine gallbladder surgery. He was only 43. Bonanza never recovered. The producers acknowledged Hoss's death within the show, and the series was canceled the following season. A gentle giant with a warrior's heart, taken far too soon. But there is one man left, and his claim to toughness is unlike anything you have heard in this entire countdown. Number 1. The only man in history to win a World Rodeo Championship and an Academy Award. Ben Johnson. Remember that claim from the very beginning? One man accomplished something no other human being has ever duplicated. His name was Ben Johnson, and he was the real deal in a town built on fakes. Francis Benjamin Johnson, Jr. was born on June 13, 1918, in Foraker, Oklahoma, on the Osage Indian Reservation. His father, Ben Johnson Sr., was a three-time world champion rodeo cowboy. Young Ben grew up on the Chapman Barnard Ranch, learning to rope and ride before he learned to read. There was no acting school, no agent, no Hollywood dream. Johnson came to California in 1940 for one reason: to deliver a carload of horses for Howard Hughes' film The Outlaw. He planned to drop off the livestock and go home. Instead, during the filming of Fort Apache in 1948, a team of horses bolted and a runaway wagon threatened to kill 3 crew members. Johnson leaped onto the wagon and brought the team under control. Director John Ford was watching. Ford rewarded him with a 7-year contract. Over 5 decades, Johnson appeared in over 300 films. He rode with John Wayne in She Wore a Yellow Ribbon and Rio Grande, Alan Ladd in Shane, William Holden in The Wild Bunch, and Steve McQueen in The Getaway. But in 1953, Johnson did something that proved where his heart truly belonged. At the peak of his film career, he walked away from Hollywood to compete on the professional rodeo circuit. He won the Rodeo Cowboys Association Team Roping World Championship. He came home broke. In his own words, all he had was a worn-out automobile and a mad wife. But he had the one thing he wanted more than anything: a world championship buckle. Then, in 1971, Peter Bogdanovich offered him the role of Sam the Lion in The Last Picture Show. Johnson turned it down. The script had profanity, and Ben Johnson did not curse. Not on screen, not in life. John Ford himself called and asked him to reconsider. Johnson agreed on one condition: he would rewrite every single line to remove the cursing. For that performance, Johnson won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in 1972. When he reached the podium, he smiled and said 6 words: "This could not have happened to a nicer fella." To this day, he remains the only person in history to have won both a World Rodeo Championship and an Academy Award. Despite amassing an estimated $100 million through real estate, he never changed. Married 53 years, charity rodeos for children across the country, and when anyone asked what he was most proud of, his answer was always the same: "I have won a rodeo world championship, and I am prouder of that than anything else I have ever done." Ben Johnson died on April 8, 1996, at 77. A real cowboy, a real champion, a real legend. From a two-sport athlete who shattered backboards, to a war hero who stormed a machine gun nest alone, to a gentle giant on frozen Korean hillsides, to a ranch kid who rode to Hollywood in a boxcar full of horses and left with a world championship and an Oscar in his hands. These were the 10 toughest Western actors of old Hollywood, and if their stories taught us anything, it is that the real West was never on a soundstage. It was in the men who lived it. If this countdown surprised you, hit subscribe and join us next time, because the golden age of Hollywood is full of stories that deserve to be told.